Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Yano. And this,
And yeah, I'm Reina.
yeah, um, I'm a senior at Rutgers University, majoring in computer science, minoring in business, and I'm a digital product designer.
I'm also a digital product designer, also majoring in computer science. I'm currently a senior, minoring in visual arts, and yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, and we're just going to talk about some basics in product design. I guess like just to get a sense of who's here. Can you guys give a thumbs up if you're interested in a career in product design? Okay, nice. Awesome. Okay. So I'll just pretty much talk about like what product design is, some resources that may help you out, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end.
Oh, and also like if you have any questions for us throughout it, just feel free to like unmute yourself and talk or like say something in the chat.
Yep. Okay, so what is product design? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So product design can encompass a lot of things, including visual design, design thinking, UX. These are all terms that are kind of used interchangeably in the industry, but the product design that we'll be referring to is in the digital space. So, like how interfaces are built, how we can make them better for people to use in their everyday lives. And a lot of it is problem solving and intentionality. So, an example of product design that may not immediately come to mind is Craigslist. While its design may not be the most, like outwardly obvious in terms of visual arts or aesthetics, it's actually very thoughtfully designed and serves its users well. The layout of the site is very straightforward, and it doesn't have a lot of visual elements which suits its users who are are likely just one thing, and when they search it will very quickly come up. Okay, and then we can talk about like the flip side of product design, which does go into a lot of aesthetics and visual arts. So taking for example, um, it Netflix is designed to feel like a very immersive experience. Is this It's designed in dark mode to make it seem like you're actually in a movie theater, and you're very immersed in the video. And the thumbnails are really huge and blown up so that the focus is on the content itself. Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned before, product design encompasses a lot of things, not only visual design and design thinking, but also interaction design. So the way we interact with apps, motion and design. So Tinder, for example, has a famous design pattern where you swipe from card to card. And it's really interesting because swiping a card is they designed it to mimic making eye contact with someone that you're interested in. So when you land on that person's profile, the image is really huge and blown out because it's supposed to mimic like in real life, you look at someone and if you're interested in them, it's so quick as just to like look at them and swipe right, and like process that you're interested, or just the same, like very quickly swipe left, not interested. So it kind of like it brings that passing moment into a digital space. And TikTok also is very famous for its design pattern. Whether this may or may not be good for users, when you watch TikTok, you're kind of locked in because as soon as that video ends, it just replays. So like you're so immersed in the experience, and very quickly you can just swipe to go on to the next video. Okay, so let's talk about design at Rutgers. There are a lot of different majors that you can pursue as a designer at Rutgers, including computer science, which Raina and I can talk about because we are computer science majors, but The other ones, although we personally can't speak to them as much, what we commonly see is ITI, students major in ITI, CogSci, psychology, or visual arts, and then they are able to like draw from those things and then use that knowledge in design. But the important thing to note here is it's not so important what you major in design because design is so interdisciplinary. It's likely that whatever your background is, it'll come in handy as a product designer because product design is so at its core focused on understanding other people and just being well informed about the world.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that. Like, I think as computer science majors, like, I don't think like directly our programming skills that we use are beneficial to like design apps. But what it is beneficial in is like when you're in industry, like when you pass things on to like developers and stuff, it helps you understand like how they're going to develop things. Um, yeah, and in terms of like visual arts at like Mason Gross, I can kind of speak to that because like I'm minoring in it. And again, it like doesn't directly help me with like my product design skills, but what it did do is I will actually one class is so I'm taking a class on color theory, and I think that kind of helps with like visual design and picking colors and things like that. But also I think like computer science and visual design are in like or sorry, visual arts, they're like on complete like opposite spectrums of like education. And so like getting that exposure to something different sort of gave me a more like worldly approach to like when I make things. Like I think like it like opened my mind a lot. And like Yano said, like designing like product design is about designing for people. So understanding how people interact and um, just how they how the human to human interaction is, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and to answer a question, any art classes and whether they would help, I personally think they'd help a lot. I don't have an art background. A lot of times I wish I did. I watched a video on composition once and I realized just how much of it translates into creating really like aesthetic UI design. But yeah, it's important to note like that's not 100% of product design because there's just so many different elements that go into it and people end up specializing in those different elements. So there might be a product designer who is a bit more visual art oriented, and then there are some product designers who are more design thinking oriented, and some even like call themselves product engineers or UX engineers that are more that work more closely with code. Yeah, so is product design for me? That is a great question. And there's a lot of different ways to explore. So, for example, you can definitely look into Medium articles. A platform Medium lets you read a lot of articles written by designers who like shed insight into how they came up in their design career and like what challenges they face. So definitely like look into those. They're really short and then they kind of like immerse you in the mindset of a designer. Okay, YouTube. Yeah. So a lot of people start by watching YouTube videos. So Vox has a really interesting series about design. And you can also look into videos created by individual designers. So there's someone named Femke, and she has a really interesting YouTube series on how to get into product design. I think Chun Buns is also someone you can listen to. But watching a video is really helpful because it kind of lets you watch it does a designer actually design something. For the longest time, I was like, well, how do I like okay, I have all this information about design, but I don't know how to actually use it. So seeing a designer actually like open up a design tool and then create a UI really helped me in the beginning. Yeah, I'll just send the name of the channels that I mentioned.
I think Vampia, who she mentioned, she also has a really good podcast that I listen to. Um, yeah.
Yeah, podcast is another great resource. Um, and of course, LinkedIn, Twitter, and email, using those platforms to reach out to designers. The one thing that's really, really great about the product design community is that designers love helping young people like coming up into design because I know how hard it is. And they know how many challenges we face. Like 99% of the time, they're willing to go out of their way to help you, whether that means like just giving life advice, giving a portfolio review, resume review. Um, and yeah, definitely like don't be afraid to cold reach out to like more established designers, and then also just peers, like students who are also doing design. Design, I think is collaborative by nature, meaning like it's really hard to design in isolation, because it being a good designer kind of like relies on having relationships with people and understanding people's needs. Yeah, so the product design industry is very young, which speaks to one of the challenges of being a designer, especially now. I think the industry, like, probably started around 15 years ago, maybe. Um, and a lot of times companies don't really know what they're looking for in a product designer. And then conversely, as a designer, sometimes you don't know what you're looking for in a company. Um, so you'll see a lot of like job applications out there who are like, yeah, we want you to be uh, understand UX and also be awesome at UI and also learn how to code and also do art illustrations and be a graphic designer. And it can be really hard to navigate sometimes because it's not so concrete what a designer does at this point in the industry. Some companies that are more established may have a better idea than others, like big companies, for example, because they have so many resources. They're able to like specialize a little bit more in design. Maybe they have more time, more money to allocate to their design team, so their design is more mature. But especially with small companies, it can be kind of a gray area in terms of what design does, which may or may not be a good thing. Also, like if you really like to get your hands dirty in all aspects of design, then yeah, that might be really interesting for you and a good opportunity to explore.
Yeah, and I think like just to add on to that, I think like some companies as a result, like because product design is so new, like a lot of companies just don't see it as a necessity. And so they value their designers differently. So it's important to make sure that you're going to be valued properly in whatever company you're in, and just yeah, just like do your research. Any company.
Yeah, something a lot of companies ask for is like a designer who's able to advocate for design. So not only do you have to be good at your job, but you also have to um, like fight for design. Like you have to really be able to convey its value and also like bring other people up into understanding the value of design. So yeah, that can be really fun experience and also really challenging. Somebody at least asked, what kind of tool software do product designers use to create their work? That is a great question. I think we have a slide about it later, right, Rena?
Yeah, I think it's coming soon. So
Oh,
um yeah, wait, does anyone have any like questions at this point? Um does anyone want to like unmute if anyone has anything? No. Okay.
yeah, or just feel free to just keep sending them through the chat, and I'll keep an eye on it.
Yep. Um, okay, so I'll be taking over from now. So, learning more. If you want, okay, I think first of all, before I like get into this, I think knowing that there is no product design track at Rutgers, it's really important to go out of your way and learn a lot about design, like on your own. So here are some resources to help you learn and sort of get into it and get into like the technical skills. One being Students Who Design. This is actually a free 3-week product design course. You literally sign up. I'm pretty sure you get like an email to a link, and that's literally your whole course, and it's for 3 weeks. And Yano and I actually personally know someone who literally got into design because of this course. And I think there's a lot out there like this, and like there's a lot of deals too. Like I remember like I literally there's like a 10-day deal or something, and like a whole entire course was free, and like I downloaded it. And these are like really good resources because again, like I said, it puts you in the environment of taking a class without actually having to take it in college. Um, yeah, so this sort of addresses the question we received earlier about like what tools people use or designers use. So the one that we like to use is Figma, and I think a lot of industry companies in industry are like moving over towards Figma. Something they used to use is Sketch, but if you think about like your Microsoft Word versus Google Docs and how Google Docs is super shareable, Figma is like your Google Docs and Sketch is like your Microsoft Word. Figma, you can literally just add people's emails. It's also free for students. I don't think, I don't, wait, Yano, are non-students able to get Figma or like use it?
Yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
I think with the student plan, you get like additional access.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, so I'm assuming most people are students here. So yeah, sign up with your student email and you get a student account, which like Yana said, it's just additional features. And yeah, I think like the best way to learn Figma would be to just play around with it and like also like watch YouTube videos like Yana said. Um, I think Figma is one of those things where you just like learn as you go. And I think a good way to get experience here is daily UI. Daily UI is actually like it's like you sign up for daily UI and it sends you emails every day for like 100 days. Is it? Okay, yeah, it's 100 days. And every day it's like a design task. So like an example would be like design a checkout screen for like any like retail website that you can think of. And it actually really forces you to think about UI and like visually how to like balance the elements on your screen, what kind of things you want to add, and like also the aesthetic. So Dribble.com is actually a really good resource for you to look at other people's daily UIs. And on Dribble, people basically post like snapshots of their designs, just like statically screenshots. So if you like look up keywords like I mentioned before, like checkout, and I wanted to look at checkout screens, if you just look up checkout, you will see like a bunch of people's uh, previous designs of the same screen for like inspiration, and also if you need help like laying things out. Yeah, I think I think like also a good thing to do when you're doing your daily UIs is like set a timer. So like only let yourself spend a certain amount of time on each one, because that way you get this like unbiased like progression of your work. And I know it's hard to keep up with. Like I like started doing it like 3 weeks ago again, and or like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and like I think I only did like three so far. Um, but yeah, I think as long as you're like you make the effort to try to do them whenever you can, it doesn't have to be every day, but I think you'll see improvement over time inevitably if you continue with them. So another way to learn more is something called Cofolios. Could you put in the chat? I think it's just cofolios.com. But it's basically where you can look up by company. Like say you're super interested in like designing for like Facebook and you want to see interns at Facebook and like you want to see their portfolios, you can go to Cofolios and look at them. And it's a nice way of like sort of objectively looking at these portfolios and like finding commonalities and finding things to incorporate into your own. Lastly, you can join our community. So we do a lot of like events about like we do a lot of workshops on like your hard skills, but also we do a lot of community-based events. So joining our community is a good way of meeting other designers. And I think a lot of people at Rutgers, because there's no design education, everyone's at that stage where they're sort of like don't know what to do and like, need resources and things like that. So yeah, we have a Discord. Yana, could you also send the link to that? Yeah, she's gonna put it in the chat, but you can join our Discord. A lot of people like I said, like doing daily UIs, like people will just send like their daily UIs for critique in our Discord and people will just help out. And yeah. Okay, so now building your career. So at this point, you know you want to be a product designer, you've sort of built like your technical skills, and now we move on to like career stuff. Ooh. Okay, so the first thing you can look at is interns.design. I think this was made by a recent like new grad designer. He basically made this website that's like updated like every weekish, and you can filter by like what semester you want like internships for, or if you want them for new grad. And it's basically this job board of like purely like UX design. Is it purely UX design actually? You know?
UX product experience.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a really good like place to have all your, like, it's a good resource for you to find internships because they're all like in one place. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, about like looking at other people's portfolios. If you want a job in product design, you need to build a portfolio. I'm sorry, I think my Discord is going off. I'm gonna exit out. Hold on. Okay, I think I'm good. 1 second. Okay, I should be good now. Yeah, so your portfolio is your main part of your application. Basically, if you want to be a designer, you need a portfolio. So what this means is you need to present all of your case studies in a personal website of yours. And I think I'll go into that more. Yeah, so these are 2 examples of what portfolios can look like. As you can tell, so these are 2 landing pages of a portfolio. As you can tell, they look super different. So the goal is you want your portfolio to be a representation of who you are. So for example, if you have like this like niche hobby in like illustration or like art, and it's not directly related to the UX design you want, you should still show that because it shows like your character. And I think you can even see here on the left-hand side, this girl, she has like a section for her illustration. And I think a lot of companies want to see that. They want to see who you are behind, like beyond design, because like we said, this like product design is about designing for people and being very aware of things outside of just your job. And so seeing that you can do other things is something that they really look for. And also shows character. Yeah, so besides like your other hobbies and like a landing page with a little blurb about yourself, your portfolio should also have your case studies. So I'll sort of go into what it means to do a case study. Case studies are basically when you design something, either a web app or mobile app or both, and you have to basically do a write-up and show your process of how you built that app. And you basically want to show your entire process and like why you made the decisions you did. So these 3 are like 3 visualizations of different like design thinking processes. All of these are just different approaches. I think like if you start like reading up on like Medium and stuff about design thinking, I think these diagrams will start making more sense and you'll be able to sort of apply them to yourself. But when people are looking at your portfolio and recruiters are looking at your portfolio, they want to see that you know how to think intentionally. And product designing is very much about intention, and you should have for every design decision that you make, there should be a reason behind it, because at the end of the day, the experience that you give a user is super influential to how they interact with your app and potentially the impact it could have. So the age-old question of how do I gain experience? This is a meme picked out by Yana. I think this is one of her favorites. It's like that cycle of like you need a job, but then you try to apply to a job and they say you need experience, but like how can you get experience if they're not giving you the job? But in terms of design, a way of getting experience outside of industry is by doing independent projects. So these independent projects can literally just be self-imposed. Like if you have an app that you use a lot and that you're genuinely passionate about and you think you can make it better some way, like design it and then like document your whole process, document your sketches. Yeah, and I think like especially for interns, independent projects are like really cool things to put on your portfolios, because there's not, especially for us, like there's not really like class projects that we can put as like case studies. So you really, like I said earlier, you really have to go out of your way and out of your bubble of like school to like reach out to others, do independent projects with them, or even like solo, like you can do them yourself. Yeah. Another way to get experience.
To add, sorry, before you move on, is make sure to be a little bit intentional about the independent project that you pick. Like, not only should you pick a app that you're really passionate about, but maybe somewhere that you're even interested in working. So, like, for example, if you're really interested in healthcare, maybe you choose a healthcare product to design. So it kind of like shows that you're thinking about products in that space already. We know a handful of people who like made case studies for companies like Spotify, and then they got reached out to by Spotify for interviews. So yeah, something to think.
Yeah, that's definitely like I said, like your portfolio should be like who you want to be as a designer and who you are as a person, and it's not just about showing like I can do X, Y, and Z things. And so the case study that you decide to put on there should personify you too. So like Yano said, like if you're specifically passionate about something, like do it. Like design an app in that like genre. Um, yeah, another way of getting experience is designathons. So you are at a hackathon right now, but there's actually something called designathons, which is basically the same concept. Like, I think they're between like 1 day and like 3 days usually. And they give you a prompt, you design something with a group, and you can do like user research, like a small scale, like user interviews, you interview your friends, you gather like data, and then you design an app according to the prompt given, and you can win really cool prizes. I know for like this one that's on the slide, I think Adobe does creative jams. I don't know if they're still doing it, but I remember over the summer, like they did a bunch, and literally just for participating and submitting, like you can submit anything and you get a 1 year Creative Cloud subscription for free. So that's like Photoshop, Illustrator, like XD, like all that stuff
I
is
have
like
a small update. Apparently, they're not giving away the Creative Cloud subscription.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
But I think there's one that just recently opened and it's for Twitch. So if you're interested in Twitch, definitely participate.
yeah. Okay. So never mind. You should still do them because you like doing them, not because you're gonna get anything out of it other than the experience. Um, yeah. Okay. So another thing you can do is reach out to startups. I think startups are generally a little bit more responsive than cold emailing big companies because like larger tech companies, they probably get like tons and tons of emails. But for startups, if they get like a personalized email, they're more likely to get back to you. Um, one thing to be aware of about startups is that generally, like we mentioned earlier, like product design is a new thing. So a lot of companies they may not value it as much. Startups being one of them because they don't really have that much budget to put a lot of money into design. So they may not have a lot of user research done, for example, which kind of makes your job harder, and maybe they don't value you as much. So I think like do your research and you know like know sort of know what you're getting into.
Yeah, definitely be careful with startups. When I first started out, I got a lot of advice saying like, "Oh, just go on Angel List and join any old startup." But I very quickly learned that that is not such a great strategy because like anything can be considered a startup. So you kind of want to make sure that like the startup is something has a business idea that you believe in first and foremost, like you believe that their product or service is going to do well. And my personal advice is if you're going to work at a startup, make sure that there's already a senior designer there. It may be sometimes it may be tempting to join a startup thinking like, oh, I'm going to be the sole designer. I'm confident in my design skills. I think like I can, help out a lot. And it's definitely true. You definitely will bring a lot of value as a sole designer, but I think like at a stage that's earlier in your career, it's going to be most beneficial to have like a design mentor or a more senior designer who can help you out. So definitely look for startups where there's already a designer there.
Yeah. Lastly, another thing you can do is design for nonprofits. Again, it's important to design for something that you're actually passionate about. And if it's a cause that you genuinely believe in, then go for it. But you shouldn't really design for nonprofits that you don't really care about the cause for, given that it is a nonprofit. I think Yana was mentioning to me earlier, I think some of them are paid, but I know like nonprofits do have a good amount of unpaid work. So again, beware about doing unpaid work. Just make sure you are actually going to get something out of it. And as soon as you feel like you are sort of stuck there and you're not really gaining anything out of it, I think that's a sign that like maybe you should move on to another position or either sort of try to involve yourself more. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we actually have an event coming up, Designathon. It's supposed to be really fun. And we basically want students to come together to design for their local community. So maybe like whether designing an app or a website. And basically, we want students to work in teams and submit a design, and then we'll give you feedback, and then we'll also have cool prizes at the end. And that's on April 10th to April 11th. So if you're interested, you can actually go on the website for it, createru.com, and sign up.
Yeah. So now we're gonna open it to questions. We sort of want this to be like conversational. So if you guys just want to like unmute and ask any questions you have, whether it be about like our personal experiences or how we sort of got into it, because me and Yana both like we both got into, we're currently seniors, but we both actually just got into product design and sort of committed ourselves to that career path our junior year. So we were super late in the game. So like I think we've experienced like the like ups and downs of just cramming an entire like career path into like a year of your life, and like at the same
Especially
time,
coming from software engineering. Like we're both CS, so like we understand, like what it's like to keep up with all the CS course workload, and then on top of that, like do the design side projects. So
yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely been like an experience, because I feel like once you venture off from your like academic goals, then it's like sometimes hard to balance. And I know Yano and I, we've had to let go of a lot of like academic responsibilities, or like even like prioritization in terms of like how like involved we are, just because it's about like prioritizing what's meaningful to you. And like we said, that's really important as designers to do things super intentionally and like do things
that's a good way to put it.
yeah, that doesn't mean do bad in school, do good in school.
Yeah, do well in school, but like make sure you have your priorities and pursue what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I hope we didn't just convince people to like drop out or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question. What made you decide to switch from software engineering?
Oh, okay. I think we both sort of have different experiences with this, so I think it'd be valuable for us both to touch on it. But in terms of me, like I did a software engineering internship my sophomore year summer, and I like did not like it. I just disliked the idea of like being given these requirements and then having to um, develop them. And I think there was a part of me that really wanted to have that like creative side of my brain like working, and I think making product decisions and having more ownership over the product was something that was really important to me. And also like I was just super into like art and stuff, and I think this was a very like visual and like unique way of um like being part of the STEM community and still using my like tech skills and like involving like the logical thinking part of computer science with like visual stuff without having to code.
Yeah. For me, um, I think I realized that like I wanted a career path that was more people oriented. So I realized at some point a lot of software engineering is like sitting down, thinking really hard about like like algorithm efficiency and like Googling on Stack Overflow questions. And yeah, I think I wanted something that like played into my interest in understanding the way people think. So when I realized that that was kind of what UX was about, I was like, oh, this is amazing. It's such a cool intersection between psychology, research, tech, and art. Yeah. But I'm really glad that I majored in computer science. I don't that there's a very popular question people ask where they say like, should designers code? It's kind of a meme on Twitter, but it's like a lot of people say that every designer should learn how to code because it gives them a solid foundation of how digital products are made. But a lot of people also believe that no, not all designers should learn how to code, and there are other facets of design that are equally as important, like the psychological aspects. But for me personally, learning how to code helped me out a lot because it has given me the tool set to build my designs. So like I do a lot of front end and like a little bit of UX engineering. And it's just really fun to like design something and then materialize it, design something and then like spend hours on Stack Overflow looking up stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also jobs that like encompass like the UX design process, but then also like developing. Like there's some companies that look for people who can do both, and like that's literally your job. Like you design and develop. And like I think it's really cool because I think if you know how to develop while you know how to design, like you're very much wanted in the industry. Like a lot of it makes it easier on like in terms of so many like levels of like communication on like like teams literally look for designers who can develop just because they've had problems with designers who don't know how to develop, and it just bridges the gap between design and developers, and at the end of the day you're designing to develop. So yeah, it's definitely like super beneficial even if you don't directly code at your job.
Yeah, for sure. And then Ashley says that it's really good knowing like there's a spot between art and CS. And yeah, if you feel that way, definitely pursue product design. It's just like a lot of people in CreativeX, they say that they started doing product design because it was an intersection of art and tech. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the case with me, like I said before, like, and I think that's like a commonality between a lot of people. And yeah.
And then here, I think, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, but it's nice that we were juniors and we had time. To that, I say it's never too late to become a designer because everyone is a designer. Um, we all make choices every day in our lives to design something, whether that's just like writing an email so that it's easier for the person receiving it to understand, um, or I don't know, like making a PowerPoint for anything, people say everyone is a designer, and I think it's really true because everyone has a capacity to have empathy for other people and um, like arrange something thoughtfully in a way that is better for the end user, whether the user is just reading an email or watching your PowerPoint. Yeah.
I have a quick question, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so like I have no creative bones in my body, but I feel like every time I look at a design and I like it, like I always want to go in like the direction of that one design without actually like implementing my own kind of thoughts. I don't know if you know what I mean, but like when I see something I like, I want to just copy it and like make it look kind of similar, but like it won't have any of my of my own thoughts. So I was wondering like how to overcome that.
Yeah. I think it's important to think about context a lot. Just because something is an optimal design for something else doesn't mean it's an optimal design for what you're doing, even if it sounds like you're building something similar. Because at the end of the day, you're designing to solve a problem with a certain goal. And even if you your solutions are the same, the goals are different. So say you want to reach one audience specifically as opposed to another, like the app will be designed super differently, even though you are designing something of the same like context.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but people say like steal like an artist. I think a lot of designers kind of live by that, where um, obviously it's not okay to steal another designer's work. Like carbon copy. You don't want to just take their case study and upload it to your website or anything like that. But it's really useful to reference things and be heavily influenced by them because yeah, like I said, design is collaborative. What you learn from other designers will eventually become like tools in your skill set for solving different problems, and that's what platforms like Dribble are made for. And people upload their designs knowing that other designers will see them and take inspiration from them. There's a lot of strong opinions about Dribble actually, where some designers don't like Dribble because they think that it kind of makes the design industry more homogenous in that like everyone ends up copying each other and then a lot of the work ends up looking the same. So yeah, it might be a balance, but yeah, I think with design, there is a part of it that kind of requires you to be able to look at another designer's work and then extract the why that work works why that solution works, and then apply it to your own design. So something like that helps me a lot is design patterns. If I look at a product and I see the way that they're using a design pattern, so a design pattern is like swiping up on an iPhone makes usually most people know that swiping up on an iPhone will like make something come up, like a modal or something pop up. That's a common design pattern. And you can copy that design pattern, like you can use it as a framework in your own design. But it's not really considered copying, but more just like using something that is proven to work, and yeah, in that way, like also people tend to like build up an understanding of common design interactions, and then collectively the design industry moves forward together, which is cool. And I don't know if any of that made sense, but yeah. Does that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, it does. There.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I have like the same exact problem. And like when I see a really visually appealing design, like I'm like, oh wow, I just want to create the same thing. But a lot of times I will try to like recreate it in some way and I can't because like I don't have a certain scale or something like that. So I end up creating something like different anyways.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I think like when I'm gonna turn off screen share so we can feel like we're talking to each other. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people experience, and I think something I forgot to mention before that I just remembered was that like I know I said to like look at other people's portfolios for inspiration, but like that doesn't mean your portfolio and stuff has to be exactly like that. And like you were mentioning, like you will look at other people's stuff and you'll want to do something like that, but at the end of the day you need to iterate until it's something that like you are represented by. And also like going back to like the idea of like this is sort of a tangent, but going back to the idea of like imposter syndrome, I think like if you go on portfolios and you look at like people's portfolios who got into like Facebook, that like by no means does that mean like do everything that they did. Like it's like, oh, they put like a back button here, or they have a like banner here. Like when you click on their case study, they have a visualization here. Like no, do something that represents you. And yeah, don't think that like people who are at like Facebook have like perfect portfolios and they're like perfect. And I think like even if you look at like people from in like big tech and like Fang, and if you look at their portfolios like and they're like full time, they probably are at a different stage in their career than you, and their portfolio is crafted to a different audience. And I think like once you start getting a job, you start getting a sense of like your validation comes from your past experiences. So those kind of people, like they won't need to show like every specific step of their design process to prove themselves. And that's sort of in contrast to like us, people who really have to break it down for people and prove to people that like, no, I know how to do this. I know the whole process. I can break it down for you and I can explain myself. And I think that's really important at this stage in our career. So definitely like don't compare yourself to other people who are out there. I think it's rather than following people, I think it's better to be different. And I was listening to like, we mentioned like Femke earlier. She has a YouTube channel. She also has a podcast. I was listening to one of her channels and she works at Uber, I think. And she has like, I think she's like, she's recruited people and she's looked at people's portfolios and she said people who have gone to like boot camps, she can like pick out the people who have gone to them and then the people who haven't, just because the people who haven't usually have more out of the box thinking. So in that sense, like being at Rutgers, not having a formal design education can also be like an advantage. Like we are so like molded by the diversity around us and not being told what to do with our design process that we have the capabilities of taking in everything that's around us and just using that as like an influence to our work.
Yeah. On a similar note, the more I talk to more senior designers, definitely not all of them think this way, but some do, the ones that like are genuinely trying to help you, is like the message is fight the urge to be exactly what the industry is trying to shape you into. So like I was really anxious for a while about like fitting the mold. As a young product designer, I felt like I needed to think this certain way, or need to have this skill set, or I needed to like brand myself a certain way, like whatever that even means. Um, because I felt like I had to do that to get a job and to like get respect in the industry. But what I learned is that like there's a lot of room and time and space for you to explore, and just be yourself, and not worry so much about like consuming everything that people are trying to throw at you, and then like putting out a version of yourself that is exactly what people expect. And like it's kind of like hard to live this advice. Like I still struggle with it a lot because I feel like I need to become a certain kind of designer. But yeah, I think that's not a good way to like live in general. Even that maybe that translates into engineering too. You know, like maybe people are like, oh, you need to be this type of engineer. You need to think this way. You need to be amazing at lead code or whatever. But no, but I think like if you just try not to soak in everything and just like focus on what your core values are, and then emit that into the world, and then the world will value you for like your unique perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah, someone asked, how would you suggest designers, new or old, prevent feeding into the quote unquote homogeneity in design trends, even if it's by accident? I think that kind of brings us back to the point that I was just saying about like being yourself and embodying your own personal, um, not opinions, but like outlooks on the world into your design. Because at the end of the day, like everyone has a different perspective on things, and that should really show through like your design. And I think that's a big part of like finding your place as a designer in this world and in this company. It's like one designer probably cannot design successfully for like 30 different companies. Like if you are in a company where you belong and that you are passionate about and you identify with their culture and their perspective on worldly things and how they approach things, I think you can be way more successful opposed to being a designer for a company that you may not care about their product as much. Um, and I think it's important to be part of a company that sort of lets you emit that like individuality into your work. Um, yeah, so I think in terms of design, like company is super important. And it's just adds this level of subjectivity to everything. Like I said multiple times, like designing for one company is so different than another company, and the same goes for like industries. Like designing for healthcare is so different from designing for like media or like finances.
Yeah. Kelsey asks, how would you suggest designers, new or old, prevent feeding into the homogeneity in design trends, even if it's by accident? That is a great question that like I don't know if I know yet or do well, but we had a really interesting talk from two more senior designers come like last Thursday, and their advice was like they said don't decide who you are, because you know like I think maybe like the first answer that someone may think of to this question is like, oh, know yourself, like know what your core values are, and then put those into the world. But they were like, no, actually, don't know yourself, because that's really hard to do, and that's not something that you can just do in one go. Like get to know yourself first, like explore that, and you know, like apply a design thinking process to it. Just kind of funny. They're saying like it's much more of an iterative process that takes time, you know, like test out, hypothesize what value, what matters to you and what values you may have, and then like test it, prototype it, try it out, test it, get feedback from other people, see if it works for you, and then iterate upon that. And yeah, who knows if that works? I haven't tried it yet. I'm the ripe age of 21, but yeah, hopefully that advice works. It's just like, in addition to being a young person and just struggling, being a designer makes you like extra self-aware of everything. So that's kind of why we're talking about this stuff right now. But yeah, hopefully that is helpful, just passing on along that advice.
Yeah, I think another thing he said, which was super interesting, is like before you can be a good designer and like before you can design apps for other people, you have to design your life the way you would design like things, which sounds like so deep and so like ew. Like, what do you mean design your life? But I think like again, like bringing back to the idea of like intentionality, I think like the speakers, they were saying things about like design your, I think like what was first? Like I think second was like relationships, meaning whether that's like with your parents, with your friends, with your family, whether that's like a romantic relationship, like you need to design those and you need to set like standards for yourself before you can commit to letting that out on something else, whether it be, like I said, a relationship. And then from there, you can move forward and reflect on yourself and like your limits onto your career and where you see yourself there. And on a more micro scale, like when you design things, like emit the same energy that you created for yourself onto your design.
Yeah. Sorry, we got very philosophical. Does anyone have like more concrete questions, like how do I get a job, or like I don't know, what should my resume say? Who can answer that too?
Feel free to like unmute yourself too.
Yeah.
Oh, just
I have
really
one.
quickly.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I just had a quick question. I know some people asked like earlier too in Slack, but let's say like I know a lot of people are here hacking like software engineering, but I guess like going apart from that, you guys answered this before kind of, but did you guys ever feel like this was a risk? And if so, like how did you overcome that fact and say like this is something I actually want to do?
I think,
So I guess like peer pressure, I guess in a way.
yeah, I think like yeah, there's a risk, but also it's like we're so young in our career. Like we feel like every decision we make is so like important, which it is. And like we think like when we're applying for internships, like, oh, I need this internship. Like this is such a big deal. Like I need to get like the next experience and like this is gonna like boost my career, which is all true. But like we are so like given that we're in CS, like we have something to like fall back onto. Like if design like doesn't work out for some reason, like we're actually so young. Like just
For you, maybe. I do not remember how to write a link list.
okay. Yano can do front end those. So she still has other things to fall back on. But like regardless, I think like yeah, I think we still have a lot of time to grow, and I think like I'm at the very brink of like my career, and I think that goes to a lot of us. We're just sort of like starting out, and like don't take your decisions too harsh. Like if you genuinely believe something like product design is something that you could pursue and that you would genuinely enjoy, like try it. Like it's better if you try it now than like later in your career when it becomes even more riskier. Like you can do a summer internship on it, and then from there like learn if you like it or not. If you don't like it, you'll still learn something about yourself or about the industry. Yeah.
I think we're running out of time, right? So yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say like thank you everyone so much for coming and listening to us. And yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming out and staying. So
yeah, and I think Yano sent our like Discord link in the chat. So like if you guys want to join, yeah, feel free to.
Thank you for coming out. Oh, sorry. Thank you just for coming and joining our event.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming.